You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. Welcome to Volatility Views, the premier program for volatility traders. Each week, we'll take a deep dive into the world of volatility with in-depth analysis, trading activity reviews, strategy breakdowns, cutting-edge education, and much more. We'll also bring you exclusive conversations with the traders, researchers, and asset managers who are reshaping the volatility landscape. If it involves volatility, then you'll find it on Volatility Views. And now, it's time to take a deep dive into the world of volatility. It's time for Volatility Views.
All right, everybody. That music means we are back here on the old network one final time, at least for you on-demand folks here, for a little bit of the old Volatility Views, the premier program for volatility traders. My name, of course, Mark Longo from the THE, optionsinsider.com, as well as, of course, from the network upon which all of you are just blowing up the bandwidth out there these days. It's okay. We shoulder the burden of the bandwidth so you folks don't have to. Get on out there. Enjoy on your platform of choice, iTunes, Audible, YouTube, Google Podcasts, wherever you get it. Estonian donkey cart with a string, however you like to listen to it. If you do like what you hear, some stars, a rating, a review, a like, whatever your platform lets you do, does help new people continue to discover the content out there. And of course, if you too want to discover more content, you don't want your broadcast week, all the fun, the partay to end with Volatility Views. You want to come back for some more action. Man, we get up to some mischief over there on Options Oddities. The trades have been coming fast and furious out there. You got to check it out. The only place to find it, of course, theoptionsinsider.com/pro. Once you go there, click on that join button there. You'll get access to pro Q&As every week. You get Options Oddities every week. You get 250, somewhere in that ballpark, episodes coming at you. The second you hit that button, you get access to the exclusive pro podcast feed. You get access to all the live, so you can bug us live during all the shows. You can heckle the Rock Lobster. It's really fun. I do it. You should do it as well. Of course, it is the final day, I believe, to get your name in the hat for the September Pro Trading Crate. So get in there. If you get in over the weekend, we'll be nice. We'll include you folks in the fun as well. But theoptionsinsider.com/pro. I'm looking at the goodies. They got to go out the door to somebody. Might as well be you, theoptionsinsider.com/pro. And speaking of goodies, I shouldn't say that on this show because it always drives him crazy. And here comes the umbrage because he doesn't get the goodies. We reserve them for you, listeners. I am joined once again by the rockingest of lobsters, Mr. Andrew GIOVINAZZI from OptionPit.com. Mr. G, welcome back to the show. Once again, I apologize, sir, but the good goodies are reserved for our pro folks.
Yes, I know. I know. Actually, I was kind of interested in if some of the listeners would send in a photo, at least on Twitter or something like that, of what an Estonian donkey cart with a with a can phone looks like.
I keep picking on the Estonians. I don't know why, but that's where my mind goes with that.
It somehow was you were feeling I forget the Baltic states. You're feeling Baltic.
Somewhere there's a shepherd in the lush grasslands of Estonia who enjoys our shows and listens to it. And maybe he has his device of choice mounted on the saddle of his donkey. You know, who are we to judge such things, Mr. Rock Lobster? However they get the
exactly. How are Are
you putting trades in fast and furious?
Yeah, I am. Well, I've got a couple things cooking. These couple of my strategies here. Today is a huge day because I closed all my VIX puts this morning. So we had that little gap down in VIX. So
a little gap down.
I'm long a bunch of SPY put spreads that I own for basically nothing. So they're all now that we're $3. So
you love your spreads for nothing.
It is an excellent day in the GIOVINAZZI account today. I'll put it that way.
Spreads for nothing or credits. That's the way you love to run. I heard, speaking of the GIOVINAZZI family and the GIOVINAZZI accounts, I hear there's a little umbrage coming my way from Mama Lobster again because she wants to be emailed about the release of all the shows. Is that what she wants? This is the demanding woman, your mother.
So I gotta get her squared away on the email.
Well, luckily for her, I could set her straight and everybody else listening. If you go to the website I mentioned, the top of every show, listeners, optionsinsider.com, you'll see the menu bar there. You'll see all the shows. You scroll down past all the most recent shows. You scroll down past the schedule, and right there at the bottom, you got to scroll a little bit, so maybe that's why you miss it. It says, stay connected to get the latest episodes. Then it has a little form, your name and your email, and says, notify me of each new episode. If you click on that, it'll also let you choose which shows if you want to have select shows. But yeah, we put out emails whenever new shows are released, and also when at the end of the week for the entire network for all the shows you may have missed. So if you want to get those catch-ups, listeners, that's the place to go. Go to the website, scroll down, you'll see stay connected to get the latest episodes. So Mama Lobster and everybody else can keep up with all the fun as we keep on rolling right on into the Volatility Review.
It's time to break down the latest developments in the volatility trading world. It's time for the Volatility Review.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Volatility Review, the portion of the show where we do just that. We break down the week that was and indeed still is, from about trading and trending and analysis and unusual activity, all sorts of fun and interesting and or unusual perspectives out there. Got another unusual one to wrap up the week. As the Rock Lobster alluded to, a lot of things popping off out there today. Of course, we have a lot of options rolling off the board there today. Of course, we have the specter of this looming potential shutdown coming. Yeah, at first, it seemed like the market didn't really give a crap about any of this. We were looking, mixed to green for pretty much most of the session. Most of the major indices were pretty much treading water, or actually up slightly in the early part of the session. It seems like we were going to do that thing we've done for the better part of this year, kind of whistling past the graveyard on a lot of these otherwise potentially dire things that are looming out there, hanging over the market. It seems like that worm finally starting to turn, listeners. The S&P, when we kicked off the show, off about 0.33%, back below the 4,300 level, dropping about 15 handles. We were right about 4,300 when we kicked off the day, now at about 4,285. The NASDAQ was up, now kind of moving towards unched, up about 0.05% as well, so that one probably going to turn red soon as well. And the Dow leading the way to the dark side, off about 0.6%. So our vol friends were looking softer. We're looking a little bit lighter earlier in the session. Hence, Mr. Rock Lobster saying he wanted to get some of his puts off today. We had VIX kiss a low right below the 16 handle this morning, 1583. Coming into the show now, it's almost exactly a point higher, 1683, 84 actually, so 1.01 points higher. But that puts us up pretty much a point from the low and about 3/4 of a point from where we were this time last week on the show. VVIX starting to firm up again as well. VVIX at about a 90, up 0.2, or it should be up 2 points from where it was this time last week. And VOLQ, a.k.a. the at-the-money vol of the NASDAQ 100 out there, up a full point at about a 20 even when we kicked off the show. So that puts that VIX to VOLQ spread at about a 3.3. So starting to widen out again. It was around 3.5. Then it kind of dipped back to around the 3 level, starting to widen out again. Intriguing stuff, NASDAQ versus S&P vol. But Mr. Rock Lobster, I bought you some time to close out your business there, sir. Now, what is catching your eye in the world of vol this week and indeed today?
Mostly this kind of reversal we had today, like a little surprising. We had, so what I would say is like this morning, SPY was up, I don't know what, almost with 0.75% or something like that. Most of the change in VIX was just from the just from kind of the move up in the index, and not necessarily a collapse in volatility. So when you look at it, like I'm looking at, let's see here, what's today? The 20th. So look at like, okay, we're going into OC for VIX. So I'm looking like at the 30th, and I'm looking at a 25 delta put. So that's like, so let's call it 4160. You didn't get like, you got a little, like literally VIX right now. So volatility on a 25 delta put a month out is down like a tick. So barely any move in vol at all. Actually, in VIX cash is back to even for the day after being down $1. So it was so the move you got wasn't really compression in volatility, as in real like liquidity providers are just taking them all down hard. Is more we rallied and they didn't really give it up. So I did see a little skew kink this morning as well. So we were doing a thing at trade desk and a trading desk, and I was explaining to my students about how the vol curve shifts a little bit. So put butterflies did not look very good yesterday when everything was kind of going south, I guess. And then all of a sudden we lifted from yesterday. We had that sharp rally yesterday, and then up this morning, and the downside curve in let's say 1 week SPX got a little steeper, and put flies looked better, but they were more fair. So we're just going through a demonstration of how to put a fly on. Actually, that trade would be doing extremely well right now. But anyway, so you get like there's a little bit of movement in vol. So even though VIX is down 5 cents right now, you definitely did get a little bit of vol movement. So nobody like while vol is let's say lower from the beginning of the week, because I think we trade around 19. When everybody, I think we were at 4,200 SPX, something like that. I think that was the low this week. Let me see. I believe it was. Yeah, 4,240. So, we had about 100 point range this week in SPX. Trough, peak to trough and trough to peak. So there was a pretty good round trip. So 100 points down and 100 points up, and now we're a solid 50 from the peak today. So, a little bit of volatility is coming back, and we haven't seen that in quite a while. So you look at it and you're like, oh, so maybe there is a little bit of teeth to this, what Congress does, without belaboring, Congress spending a bunch of money again. But the market doesn't like the fact that the government can't run itself in general, because it does add uncertainty, and uncertainty the market generally doesn't like. So at least right now, I think they're paying a little more attention to it. Just that's a short answer. They're just paying a little more attention to it, and there's a little more vol. So, is it just the government shutdown, which I don't know, or is it more like, rates and, interest rates? Like TLT is basically flat today, so rates have stopped going up, at least right now. So I don't know. I think there's definitely a little more uncertainty. Everybody's kind of giddy this morning on the PCE number. So still got inflation. It hasn't gone away. It's not increasing as fast as it was last year. I think mostly due to oil prices and stuff. But, I think the average person is looking at grocery bills and saying, my grocery bill is not cheaper. Like I'll just, as an example, my coal bill is double what it was 2 years ago. Pallet of coal was $350 and now it's like $650. So, well, not exactly double, but close enough, maybe up 80%. So like, that's all, like those prices are not coming down. So, I think that is still an issue. How much of an issue? It has not been enough to really kick SPX down this year. So, at least I would say there's a little more vol than there was last week, but it's still not. We're not anywhere close to crazy town. The VIX curve is not saying crazy town. It's more just. I know we talk about that in a couple seconds, but it's showing some stress, but it's still relatively benign, and kind of a sort of a contango, but with a very tight front end. So all of the short-term vols, like volatilities 2 weeks and in, started to decline this morning, and now everything's kind of kicking back up again. So we'll see what happens. I think maybe going into the weekend, everybody all of a sudden is like not totally comfortable being, super long. And I think that's kind of where we sit right now.
That is where we sit indeed. You mentioned the futures out there, and we're not heading to crazy town. I think that's an apt description. Not heading to crazy town, at least not yet. All right, when we kicked off the show, we had the front portion of the curve starting to move up, but ever so slightly, listeners. It was almost a rounding error. Interestingly enough, both the ACH and NO future kind of moving in lockstep again this week. Both of them up 0.3 of a point. You don't see that too often, but that's the scenario where we're in right now. Also, not a ton of space, not a ton of breathing room between the cash and the ACH future. It's a little over half a point, almost 0.6 of a point out there right now. So we're used to these gulfs, these chasms of 1.5, 2 points, and we're seeing that obviously come in. And not that long after SEP rolled off the board, too. So kind of interesting there. Mr. Rock Lobster, you kind of touched on it. As you put it, we're not exactly in crazy town out there in the VIX futures, but they're starting to firm up a little bit, especially in the front portion. If we roll out a little bit again, let's just check really quickly. That 20 handle, where that 20 handle is lurking is also a key consideration, I know, for a lot of our listeners. And if we go all the way out to May of next year, we're pretty much almost at exactly the same level we were this time last week. We were at a 1980 last week, and this week we're at a 1990 in that May future. So still not quite at a 20. Maybe if we waited a little bit and re-rack them at the end of the show, we might see that May future over a 20, but not quite there yet. What else is catching your eye out there in the world of volatility futures this week, sir?
Again, so this is for our little option pit fair value number, this would show where, the ACH and NO futures are relatively close to VIX cash. So in our world, this is a little tight relative to historical, what I would say like a historical average kind of forward vols. So this is the curve showing some stress. So the fact that we're at a 17 is like it's feeling. What's weird is like realized vol is still like 12.5% on average over the last 10 days. That's not huge, It's just not. It's not a huge number. So like I think there's it's like a tale of two cities. You got like implied vols are still kind of juicy, but the market's not moving very much. So it's I guess it's what we have, right? So it's but it makes VIX is actually more fun to trade because now VIX is moving. So we had a range of what in the last 2 weeks, 13 to 19. So like there's a lot of hay to be made when VIX is moving, 6 points in 2 weeks. Because like relatively, it's up, up 50% from its lows. I know percentage of an index, but I mean, it's, it was 13 and then it's up 6 points. Like all of a sudden VIX has some action. And the fact that realize vol is still pretty low, there's still that sort of a gravity kind of pulling it down. Every time the market doesn't move, VIX kind of tanks again. So it's a little bit more fun, I would say, to trade in here because you have a lot more closable positions in a short period of time, because it's moving. So it's kind of fun. It just depends on obviously how you trade it, but there's definitely a lot more opportunity to trade it when VIX is moving around like this. So it's been a good week for me, so I'm not going to complain. But and for my students, a weekly profit cycles, and my students an option pit. So there's stuff to do. And a flat front end of the curve is always, to me, from a signal point of view, it's more like it's not so much a signal as how much the market SPX is going to move, but more like how easy it is for VIX to move. Like Monday, we get no real action this week. By Monday, Tuesday, VIX could be 15 again, or it could be 20. It's definitely, the signal is more of a move for VIX, so it would not surprise me either one at this point.
Let's see if we can find any surprises out there in the land of the big mothership VIX options. Are you putting up some paper? This little bit of the worm turning seems like it's ratcheting things up a little bit out there in VIX land. Not quite as robust as we were this time a day ago. We were over 600,000 contracts pretty easily yesterday in VIX. Today, not quite there, but looking respectable, 417,000 contracts. Also worth noting this, post-Powell bump, not just in vol, but in VIX volume, is reflected out there in the ADV as well, shooting up over 100,000 contracts, 108,000 contracts getting added to the VIX tape since our last show. The ADV is now 765,000, so we're back in those frothy early August numbers we were talking about not too long ago out there. So 750,000 contracts a day, that's nothing to sneeze at out there in VIX land. Let's look at the top size positions. What's open for size in VIX land right now? I guess let's find out together. Number 10, cost you 214,000 contracts to break into the top 10 in VIX right now. That is nothing to sneeze at. Usually we're talking $1.50, maybe $1.60, $1.80 if things are really looking frothy and dense out there. But 214, that's a pretty high bar to break into the top 10 in VIX. That gets us to the Jan 45s. We're off to the races already, listeners, at number 10. Number 9, 216,000 of the Jan 47 halves. So if you don't like the Jan 45s, here you go. Number 9, the Jan 47 halves. By the way, 8-2 calls over puts in our top 10 this week. For those of you who keep track of such things, I know a lot of you have your scorecards, writing that down every week. Number 8, 223,000 of the first of 2 puts in our top 10. Yes, a whopping 2 this week, listeners. It's the October 16 puts. Number 7, 225,000 of the Dees 45. So Jan 45, a little bit too distant, maybe a little bit too pricey for you. Allow me to present the Dees 45s. Number 6, 226,000 of the Dees 25s. Number 5, our second and final put in the top 10 this week, 246,000 of the OC 15 puts. Ah, yes, the 15 strike. So many stories to be told about the puts on the 15 strike month after month. Instead, we'll keep on rolling. Number 4, 272,000 of the Nove 47 halves. The 45s and 47 halves, just capturing the imagination these days for some reason. Number 3, 297,000 of the OC 20s, the comparatively reasonable OC 20s. Number 2, right back at it, 301,000 of the Dees 40s. And the number 1 size position in VIX options right now, dominating the VIX tape, listeners, 313,000 of the Dees 35s. So here we are, right back at it, listeners, with some upside dominating our tape. Not quite the upside we maybe became accustomed to a year ago when we were all talking about the 70s, 80s, 90s pars and above. It just was kind of crazy town, to borrow the Rock Lobster's phrase, for a while there in VIX land. Even now, the 47 halves, those would have been laughable a year ago. Those would have been, that's the start of your vertical, the 47 halves. You buy the 47 halves, you sell 2 or 3x of the 90s, and you go from there. I'm not quite seeing that kind of paper this year, listeners. In terms of the paper we are seeing, let's dig in, shall we, and see what we're finding out there. Today, like we said, 417,000 contracts on the tape. The big dog today, almost 50K, 49,000 and change of the OC 15 puts going up out there in VIX land today. Interesting. Looks like they went up part of a spread. And looks like the number 2 trade are the OCK 17 calls. So I'll have to go see if I can find the other leg. Yeah, of course that's not it. It's not showing me right now. It looks like an OCK 15-18 ratio put spread went up 5,000 by 2,500 times, 1 by 2. So that wouldn't account for the 50,000 though. By the way, the OCK 15 puts going up nearly 50,000 times this morning, followed by 23,000 of the OCK 17 calls. So could be a weird, funky ratio risk reversal. Interesting. A lot of size paper going up today, all kind of over the place. Even though it wasn't that far apart. It's only 9 minutes away from the 15 puts. So one of those things, if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, perhaps it is a duck, even though it didn't go up marked as spread. Then 18,000 for number 3 of the OCK 25s. Number 4, 15,000 of the OCK 17 puts. And rounding out the top 5 today, 14,000 of the Jan. The Jan 19 calls. Let's get out to yesterday, listeners. And yesterday, a pretty action-packed day, all things considered, but not even the most active day of this week. Hence the ADV exploding upward again this week, listeners. 902,000 contracts on the tape, so kissing a million, and not even the most active day of the week. The big dog yesterday, 61,000 of the Jan 45 calls, followed by number 2, 60,000 of the OCK 15 puts. So right back again to that strike, that ever-popular strike. Number 3, right back to the 45s again, 44,000 of the OCK 45 calls. We were speculating about this yesterday on the old option block, whether this was a roll or not, or just a straight-up vertical. Either way, intriguing paper going up out there yesterday. So the OCK was closing. So it looks like it was a roll. It looks like it was a roll out to Jan, because we have about 45,000, again, of the OCK going up for closing and then opening for more for size on the Jan 45s. Usually a sign, if it is a roll, listeners, that it's a bit of a house money roll, maybe sitting on a little bit of house money on that one. So intriguing time to be rolling your 45s, but we've seen crazier things. Again, number 3, the 44,000 of the OCK 45s. Number 4, 32,000 of the OCK 20s. And the number 5 most active contract yesterday on a pretty active day in general, 32,000 of the OCK 25s. Getting to Wednesday, even more paper, 990,000 contracts. Really, really coming close to that 1 million contract mark. And even still, not the most active day of the week. The big dog on a very active Wednesday, 67,000. Again, OCK 15 puts. That's our strike du jour this week. Number 2, 61, almost 62,000 of the D's 42 halves. Number 3, 45,000 of the OCK 45s. Number 4, 45,000 as well of the OCK 50s. Do we have some 45-50 vertical action? That's an interesting choice. I think the Rock Lobster would refer to that as kissing your sister, but I digress. Number 5, 41,000 of the OCK 14 puts. Tuesday, 1.13 million contracts on the tape. The most active Tuesday we've seen in a while, and certainly the most active day this week, unless today really turns on the gas. So the big dog on Tuesday, 76,000 of the October 16 puts, followed by 44,000 of the OCK 30 calls. Number 3, 44,000 of the OCK 15 puts. Number 4, 43,000 of the October 18 puts. And rounding out the top 5 on a very busy day, all 40K and above. That's a banger day. 41,000 of the October 20 calls. Monday, no slouch as well, even though by comparison to Tuesday, it's pretty much almost half. Monday, 614,000 contracts on the tape. Even though the big dog was pretty active, 93,000 of the OCK 25. That's a good chunk of paper for an otherwise normal day. Number 2, 47,000 of the OCK 20s. Number 3, 41,000 of the OCK 23s. Number 4, 33,000 of the October 17 calls. And rounding out the top 5 on a very busy Monday, on a very busy week, really. Just a crazy week out there. 28,000 of the OCK 30 calls. Mr. Rock Lobster, I just broke down a freaking boatload, I think is a technical term, of paper out there. What, if any, trades or trends out there in the VIX options caught your eye this week, sir?
Well, one, there's huge open interest in VIX puts. Like it's been a while since I've seen these numbers. Like the October, there's 250,000 open on the October ordinary 15 puts, 223,000 on the OCK 16s, 150,000 on the 17s. Like I said, it's like the OCK 14 puts, 1013, 129,000. So the fact that VIX is moving around so much and realize vol so low, it just brings a lot of it brings a lot more fun into play, and it brings VIX puts back into play. One thing nice about the VIX puts and VIX put pricing is it's relative. You can buy like the 14.5 or the 15 puts are 30 cents, and they can double. It's kind of fun. You get some action with them when there's some movement in VIX. So I'd say there's actual open interest on some puts now because those lower realized vols, the broad market lower realized vol brings the 13 handle back into play and like getting close to zone 1, the zone of the monk again. So it's been a while. So I'd say that's the biggest. If I'm going to go observationville, that would be the biggest one for me. I didn't see like a ton out of the ordinary upside call paper, but mostly a lot more of that downside paper.
It seemed like for a second there, Mr. Rock Lobster, earlier this week, we hit like a 19.5 in VIX cash. I thought, might be welcoming on a special guest onto Vol Views this week. Return of Mr. Loggins. Didn't quite get there this week, sir, but we were ever so close. Were you excited? Were you getting a little antsy that we were going to have a return of your favorite guest star, sir?
Yes, and that was another thing that can we mention his name? Can we mention Kenny Loggins? Because I don't want us to be demonetized or anything like that.
Go to town.
The podcast police come and give you the spanking for playing Danger Zone. What it's like normally, like when you get that close to 20, you cross 20. And my like normal VIX rule is you cross 20 once, you cross it twice. So I found it a little odd that we didn't make that kick. But again, there is not that appetite to sell stocks. I mean, you look at a lot of stocks, and they look terrible this year, aside from what they call the Magnificent Seven. That seems to be holding everything up, although Apple's finally taking it on the chin a little bit, not really rallying back a ton. But, it's just like everything looks like, and then it stops. Like there is no real appetite to dump equities. It doesn't mean people don't want to sell them, and because there's some news or something like that. But there just is not everybody is hitting the exit. So VIX can't get above 20 and stay there. There isn't the underlying vol. There's just not enough. There's not enough motion in the ocean yet to really make it happen. So that's, I think, the biggest observation is the fact that VIX is moving around, but realized vol is still low, and we're not having like those sustained days of like down 1.5, down 2, down 3. We're not getting those. And if we don't get them, like SPX tends to rally after a while. I mean, that's just the way it is. I mean, if the market's not going down, it's going up. So, especially if VIX is a signal, people just aren't. They're not reaching for that downside. That doesn't mean they won't start next week, but at least for right now, they're not. So that's my big observation of this.
The big observation indeed. Let's see what observations we have in store for us out there in some of the vol ETPs. Let's start in SVIX land. 28.5. That puts it down about half a point from where we were this time last week. Obviously, that one kind of vacillating around throughout the week as well. Like it got as high as almost 30 again, 29.60. That was just earlier this morning, so obviously giving off over a point from this morning as the worm has turned out there. Actually seeing a little bit of paper start to materialize out there in SVIX again, which is good for everyone who wants this product to succeed over the long term. 4,600 contracts up right now. That may not sound like a ton, and compared to VIX and others, it's not. But when the ADV is 3,500, and that's up 1,000 on the week as well, that's actually an encouraging sign that someone's trading this thing. I mean, the ADV was languishing around 2,000 for a long time. So the ADV has shot up over 1,000 contracts this week, and we're seeing 4,600 on the tape today. So maybe a sign that good things are happening, at least from a volume perspective. Maybe if this keeps up, maybe we'll get the weeklies everyone's been bemoaning out there in SVIX. In terms of size positions right now, let's do a quick top 5. The biggest position open right now in SVIX are almost 8,000 of the OCK 20 puts. So that's certainly pretty interesting, followed by 2,000, 2,100 of the OCK 25 puts. Number 3, 1,500 of the DEES 10 puts. So number 4, 1,100 of the DEES 24 puts. And number 5, 1,000 of the DEES 20 puts. In terms of active paper today, though, we got what's like most of the paper today is over 3,000 of the OCK 25 puts. Looks like paper blasting those out today, Mr. Rock Lobster, for 80 cents. So interesting. I was wondering if we're going to see more people starting to nibble at SVIX with some short put sales. And I guess at least today the answer is yes. What are your thoughts on SVIX right here, Mr. Rock Lobster? And also, are you a fan of selling the OCK 25 puts for 80 cents right now?
I have to say, selling puts in SVIX, like I get it, but man, I have bad memories of
the XIV that one day, right?
Yeah, I just tell students with the trade like you sell put spreads. Just now, SVIX has proved to be more resilient, but of course we haven't had you haven't had that crazy amount of the AUM and SVIX is not that big yet. So it just hasn't become an unhinged product. So like I get the fact that, people sell puts in there, especially when it's feeling good. And I could see, when we have a spike in vol, selling some puts to kind of enter the trade. So it's reasonable, but I'm still in the selling put spread camp, not selling puts. So it does. I get it, but it's always it's like if I buy SVIX, generally buying those, they're fun to buy when the market kind of dumps and vol pops, right? It's a nice reversion trade. But I usually just I buy the underlying and I'll buy a put. And then eventually I'll sell a call against it. I'll do just stupid stuff like that. So there's no, I liked it. I basically, to sell a put in SVIX, I want to see, I want to be hiding under my desk, basically. That's a good time. Like a good time to sell puts in SVIX is when you want to hide under your desk because everything is so terrible.
It's funny you said that because I had the exact same thought when I saw that. I was like, I get it, but I also was looking for something else I could buy against it just because, 2018 looms large. There's a reason why I don't. The scars
are still real. Yeah, the scars are still real for students of mine.
There's a reason why I don't own SVIX underlying right now either, even though I know the Meatball and Once and Future Dr. VIX, huge fans out there. I'm still a little skittish on those things, but intriguing stuff. These are Franken products after all, listeners, so just be fully aware of that when you're out there writing puts. But I get the attraction. I get the appeal. So intriguing stuff out there. Just seller beware in this case, listeners. Let's get out to UVIX. And normally I'd say, who cares? 335 up 0.15. Who cares? But who cares? We care right now, listeners, because the news is finally out. We talked about it. It broke. It was, I think, on our show last week. We were talking about it live, and the news broke right during our show. So fascinating time. Mr. Rock Lobster, where were you when you heard the great news, the much anticipated news, sir, that we're finally getting the UVIX split? Even though it's not what I wanted a little bit more juice on there, but I guess at the end of the day, beggars can't be choosers, sir. So where were you when you heard the much anticipated news, and did you drop everything and just raise your fist to the heavens in triumph?
Well, one of these days, I just want to just go for it and say like 20 to 1.
Yes.
But I think they're giving us 10 to 1, right?
Yes. That was my thought exactly. In fact, I was complaining about that on Twitter. I don't want to jump to our listener questions, but and then Bill Luby Vixenmore chimed in, and he said, I was thinking the exact same thing. He said, doing the 5 to 1 is like pissing into the wind, and those annual 10 to 1s must get old. I think he's being charitable with the annual. Those are like almost quarterly now. They're going to have to keep doing those.
Yeah.
So, yeah, what are we doing? 20 to 1, let's just set it and forget it. Give us some time. But I guess we'll take what we can get, so it's better than a two-handle.
Yeah, so, yeah, I was I think Mark told me. He's like, oh, so, of course, Option Pit will do a show, and we'll do a webinar, and the joys of these vol products when they split, reverse split. Like, also for listeners, note to self, when anything reverse splits, it's generally bad for the underlying. Nobody got rich off reverse splits. All right. It just it it hasn't worked. I think
don't forget about EDU, sir. EDU, we all made fortunes in that EDU reverse split, right?
Exactly. Maybe that might be. I think at least that hasn't gone to zero, right? After reverse split. I guess GE. Remember when GE reverse split their stock about 2 years ago, and everybody scratched their head. We're like, the fact that their stock was just a $10 stock, and their board's like, our stock shouldn't be a $10, it should be a $100 stock. They reverse split the stock, and then it literally spent the next year going down 50% from 100 to 50. Now it is back over $100. So I will say that is one of the few stocks that has survived a reverse split. However, I don't think the stock has gone anywhere meaningfully since they did that. Like, so somehow just making the stock price higher is kind of like printing money out of thin air. It doesn't really do anything. So, and I think that's, but the fact that they, at least 10 to 1 is something. It's $30. It's at least a tradable number. All the guys on Twitter can be excited because they can, go sell calls and sell call spreads and do their whole, vol selling routine around it, which, it definitely works. But it's, it will make for interesting, definitely some interesting copy on that. So anyway, I think that's it's a good thing to have happen. At least for people that like to trade the product, because it's one of those things, they're waiting for it. It gets down to $3 and they're waiting for a vol event so it can go to $4, right? Because how you look at it, you're like, okay, how much do the VIX futures have to go up on a percentage basis for a $3 UVIX to move? So if the futures double in value, that's how UVIX gets from 3 to 6, right? So that would mean VIX has to go to 35 or 36. So, it makes it a less exciting product for sure. But now with the magic of a reverse split, it becomes exciting again for everybody.
I see what you did there. You did 10x, so it's at a 335 right now, so it's going to be a 33 handle. But remember, the reverse split isn't for 2 weeks. It's not till October 11th. So if past is prologue, this thing's going to erode down to 195 again, and then they're going to reverse split it. So it's going to be 1950.
Terrible.
It's going to be just completely meaningless. So I'm with you. A 30 handle would be nice. Again, if past is prologue, we probably won't be hanging out there. Unless this whole shutdown thing pops off, then we probably won't be hanging out there. So we're going to see a pretty meager reverse split. But again, enjoy that ride from 20 back down to 2 while it lasts, listeners. Speaking of things lasting, let's keep on rolling here. Let's go out to UVXY, 15 3/4 right now, literally unched on the week. In fact, that's kind of our theme as this worm is turning, is putting all of our vol products back to unchanged on the week. UVXY putting up some numbers today, 132,000 contracts on the tape. The ADV, 117,000. That's ticking up 6,000 as well. The big dog position in UVXY, these are all pre-split adjusted, so we'll let these kind of filter off and get some new real positions out there somewhat soon. Let's go out to VXX, a product I know a few of you are trading. I have dabbled in myself with very recently, very small size, just some flies to kind of test the waters out there, listeners. VXX 2280 right now, also literally unched on the week. 110,000 contracts on the tape right now. The ADV also moving in the right direction. 94,000 contracts right now, up 11,000 from this time last week. Again, still a pale shadow of its former self, but looking a lot more robust than it was a year ago when everyone, including myself, had washed their hands of it. The big dog position in VXX options right now, about 35,000 of the D's 15 puts. So again, that 15 strike, everybody loves it. Doesn't matter if it's VIX, doesn't matter if it's VXX. It's everyone's favorite. Number 2, 34,000 of the OC 25 calls. Number 3, 18,000 of the D's 18 puts. Number 4, 13,000 of the OC 18 puts. And the number 5 size position in VXX right now, about 13,000 of the D16 puts. Mr. Rock Lobster, anything lighting up your tape or hitting your portfolio in UVXY or VXX these days?
I have been trading VXX down to the D's because every time now when you get the vol spike, I like putting on a quarterly position in there where I just buy a bunch of VXX puts and a bunch of SPY put spreads. And so, yes, I am going out to the quarterly VXX once because there's enough play there where like at one point I was looking at, there was like a theoretical low for VXX of like 15 by end of December, with, what potential decay and stuff could be. So I did add that trade. So I bought December ordinary 19 puts, and I bought a bunch of SPY put spreads. And then we see what happens. So if we get like that eye rolling rally, I'll take off the short SPY put that I have on in the spread, and then just leave the one naked put open for the potential home run type trade. So you can set those up. I like having them on. It's like anything if you want to do an equity portfolio hedge type thing, you got to have a put to sell when the market craps out. And then when it craps out, you sell a put. But if it doesn't, like it has this year, vol puts, they pay the bills. They pay the bills on those types of trades. So they're fun to trade. And, when you have a little bit of movement in vol again, and, we were getting down into like to the 13s, and that just craters a trade like VXX. So, yes, I have been dabbling back out to the quarter again for VXX, not more than a 10 lot or a 20 lot though. But, I would like VXX to be a something I could do a little more in, but as of yet, it's still relatively, the size is relative. We're going to the dance. We're not going big yet. We're just going to the dance right now with VXX.
Just going to the dance as we keep on rolling and go into a little bit of your volatility voicemail.
It's time to share your thoughts and opinions with your fellow volatility traders. It's time to check the volatility voicemail. Make your voice heard by dialing 779-669-4VOL. Posting a comment on the optionsinsider.com, sending an email to questions@theoptionsinsider.com, or posting your questions to twitter.com/options or facebook.com/theoptionsinsider.
All right, listeners, we're coming down to the wire on the show and also on our question of the week. If you're listening on the podcast, I think we extended it a little bit, so you will have time to vote later on today when the podcast hits the on-demand network. All you live folks, of course, if you haven't already, get your votes in at Options right now. Mr. Rock Lobster, our question of the week gets to sentiment. On everyone's mind these days, it's also the subject of our question of the week. We asked you, we've seen a little red on the screen lately, so it's time to gauge your broad market sentiment once again. Quite simply, where are you comfortable buying into, or perhaps buying more if you already have some, SPX right now? Gave you 4 ranges, right around here, which is where it was when we posted this earlier this week, 4,300 to 43.5, or a little bit lower, below 4,200, or still lower, below 4,000, or you're in the Matt from Orat's 3,000 before 5,000 camp, and you're saying below our lows from last year, below 3,600. Mr. Rock Lobster, where are you hanging, and where do you think our audience is hanging out?
I said yesterday, I'm in the nibble camp right now. So I think right around 4,200 isn't a bad place to just, add some. But I think people are sub 4,000. That's where I think they are.
Our audience, usually pretty bearish. Right now, they're only slightly bearish. I guess it depends how you look at these results. Because the largest percentage, 42.1% right now, going for a little bit lower, so below 4,200, which is kind of in line with what you were saying, Mr. Rock Lobster. Get a little bit of downside, use it to scoop or average back in. But then almost a quarter of you, about 25% of you, saying they're going for the big dog, the whole enchilada. They want below the 2022 lows of below 3,600. So you want some more red on the screen. You want to feel that pain before you buy in. I can't say I blame you there. Below 4,000, so even lower, coming in at 19.3%, and only 14% in the Uncle Mike camp saying, yeah, right around here is fine for me. 4,300 to 43.5. Get in there, add options to vote. If it's not pinned, we'll try to retweet it throughout the week. You should have a few hours left by the time it hits the on-demand tonight to make your voice heard, as it's time for the Rock Lobster and I. There's no more time for us left. Our time has run out, unfortunately, because it is time for the crystal ball.
It's time to peer into the future and reveal what the volatility gods hold in store. It's time to look into the crystal ball.
All right, listeners, welcome to the Crystal Ball, the portion of the show where we get wild, we get dangerous. We try to wrestle with the vol gods, see what they have in store. Mr. Rock Lobster. Oh, this is a good one, because I looked like a genius. Earlier this week, I was the only one with the courage of my convictions to say, you know what, we are going to be a little bit frothier this time next week. I went out on a limb. I took a 17 handle. Folks thought I was a madman. I said 17.35. I looked like a genius, and then it started going away today, and I was like, oh my goodness, it's going to be another Vol Views where I was right until I was wrong, and they just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in, and just ripping defeat from the jaws of victory. But now this little turnaround again has got me back in contention. 17.25 is where we are with VIX Cash right now, listeners. I was at a 17.35. So that puts me once again, ding, 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 winner, winner, chicken dinner for me. That's a couple of bullseyes in the last few weeks, listeners. So I'm starting to find my footing here in this range of VIX out here. You know, fun stuff out there. Mr. Meatball was doing his palindromic nonsense. 1661. He was looking a little better this morning. I was kind of mad. I was like, damn it, this move, it gave the gift to the Meatball, but now it took it back away. Actually, both of you were on last week, and you were going lower. You said 1610, Mr. Rock Lobster. So no joy for you. I think Options Queen was the only listener on our pro side who went 17. She had 1760. So no joy there. Oh, Option Guy, I see you there, 1720. I see a bunch of 15 and 16 handles as well. Our producers will go through the whole list, make sure there's no other 17 handles flirting around there. But right now, it seems like I am alone on the dais this week. Mr. Rock Lobster, first off, how does it feel to once again be back on the show with a bullseye? You know, I get it. It's intimidating, but you can handle it. And then B, as my gift to you, my reward for losing so terribly, you get to go first.
So this is a classic. So this morning, I'm like, I'm winning the show, right? Because we're literally at 16:10.
You were looking pretty good. I was quite mad this morning. Yes.
I like, okay. So I'm like, all right. And then all of a sudden, I could see that we're leaking a little bit, like leaking upward. So I'm like, okay. So I sold my VIX puts basically. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to win the crystal ball, but at least. I sold a bunch of VIX puts and I made some money. And of course, you know, you have the good with the bad. You have to, okay, I'm going to feel good about selling my puts, but Longo is going to get the bullseye. So I got to listen to that for 3 or 4 minutes at the end of the show. You got to weigh the real money. You take what you can get. You take what you can get. That's all. That's what this life is. There's nothing guaranteed.
You got to weigh the real money versus the game. Like, I'm getting smoked in my fantasy football league right now, but I'm crushing it in my real money wagering on NFL right now. So I guess I'll take that. I'll take the winning of the real money over the game. So in that case, you should be happy.
But I have to say that we didn't do a bad job on our predictions from last week, considering we caught the morning opening and the closing. So that's not bad. Although Options Queen, for once, she didn't beat us. So
finally, sticking it to her. Take that, Options Queen.
Although I'll tell you, we wait 2 more minutes, and we're trading 1752 right now.
Let's finish the show.
1760 is going to
Let's finish the show before she becomes right. So what's your prediction, sir?
I have to say I am not feeling great about next week. I'm actually going to go because I'm surprised by this. It's hard for me to say that but I'm going to go like 18-10 for next week.
Wow, look at you. You're playing my role.
It doesn't feel right to say it, but I'm going to go just because I think the knuckleheads in Congress are going to cause more problems than they solve. But
I can see that. I can see a 19 handle, but I'm gonna pair my expectations. I'm gonna say a little bit higher than I was this week. I'm gonna say 1765. So still frothy, still juicy, but kind of bouncing around the levels We are right now looking here. Oh, Options Queen, she's back at 7. She's holding firm. She says 1760 this time next week, so she's actually scumming me.
Wow.
I guess maybe I'm scumming her. I don't know how that goes. And the nickel 16.5. Get all the rest of your options. Yeah, 1740. Nickel 16.5. So a lot of predictions coming in. Get your predictions in if you're listening live now. If you're listening after the fact, we let you put them in until the end of the day today. Then you're cut off because after that it's no fair. But so get them in. Questions at theoptionsinsider.com. If you're within our ballpark here, you too can win fabulous prizes, including a lifetime of free trades from the Rock Lobster. Isn't that correct, sir?
Yes. 888-TRADE-01. You get 10% off anything at Option Pit. If you're interested in learning how to do all this stuff, how all these products work together, subscribe to something. We've been doing it for, 11 years, 12 years, something like that. So people keep coming by and we keep teaching them.
You're a child. You're an infant in this online option space, sir. Come at me when you've been pushing 17. Then we could talk out there. But you're just a wee babe. In the meantime, I said a lifetime of free trades. He said 10%. Go figure out which one of us is right. OptionPit.com, the place. I see some 15 handles flying into the chat now. 1590 with Frank. He's feeling this vol, kind of much ado about nothing, maybe a bit of a tempest in the teapot. What are you feeling, listeners? Get in there. Get your questions, get your suggestions, get your picks for vol, more importantly, in. So you, too, can win fabulous prizes. Unfortunately, that music means we're done for vol views. If you're listening on the on-demand, the podcast side, unfortunately, that means you are done for the week as well. All the pro folks hang out. We'll be back in a little bit. It'll be myself and the Rock Lobster dialing up all sorts of... He talked me into some crazy trades last week. Are they working out? I've talked him into a bunch of crazy ones, too. So I guess turnabout's only fair play. But are they working out? Let's find out on Options Oddities coming up in a little bit. If you, too, want to play along, theoptionsinsider.com/pro is the place to go to get access to all that fun content where you get your own exclusive podcast feed. You get, of course, live access to everything we do. You get your name in the hat. More importantly, you're coming down to the wire, name in the hat for the September Pro Trading Crate. Trust me, you want that. And then, of course, all the other fun, theoptionsinsider.com/pro. Then we'll see you back here on Monday. Another episode of the old OB all the way through to next Friday. Another episode of Volatility Views. Stay safe out there, everybody.
You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.